absolutely.
All right. Very happy and lucky to have former U.S. amateur champ, Michigan State alum, um, LIV golfer, professional golfer, Asian Tour member, on the road to recovery, Mr. James Piot. James, thanks for coming on. It's always fun to talk to some fellow Michiganders, especially if I haven't been there in 30 years.
That's all right. I'm already a snowbird at the age of 25, so I'm already getting my way out of Michigan, but appreciate you having me on.
It wasn't long. When I got out, I went to Ferris State. I was in the golf program there, and the last winter that I spent on campus, the wind chill was 40 below, and that was when I made my full decision, full commitment to as soon as I walk off that stage, I'm out of here. This is because obviously I was a golfer, and the only reason I went to the golf program was at that time I knew I wanted to play pro when I was in high school. I think all kids have that ambition, but I had made the commitment in my own head, and I knew that it wasn't going to happen in Michigan. I had interned in Hilton Head, so I came back here, but I had made that commitment to myself that I am gone from this place as soon as I get the opportunity. And now I go back there and I love it. My family and friends are still there. I love Michigan this time of year, apple cider and cider mills. So it's not all bad. It's just bad from like late November to probably June.
Yeah, that's for sure the time of the year where you don't want to be here, especially if you're golfing for a living. There's nothing going on here. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's drinking season. I could say it now that I'm out of college. That was yeah, once off season hit, I'm like, okay, we got workouts Monday through Friday, whatever, but that's where you can let loose a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what season it is in Michigan in my head.
You know, um, you had played golf from a young age, and then obviously had went to Michigan State, had some very good success there. What was professional golf always in the back of your mind when you were a young kid, or were you like some others who really didn't make that commitment to want to turn pro until you had some success in college, or even later in college? I had Scott McNeely on Maverick's dad because I'd played golf with him a long time ago. I met Maverick when he was about, I think, 8, 10 years old. And I don't think Maverick really made that decision, even with the success he had, until late in his college career. So for yourself, who has had great success as an amateur, when did you start pondering that idea?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was as soon as I picked up a club, I was like, "This is it." My dad got me started when I was 4 years old. He was a scratch golfer, pretty good player, and still loves the game. So I still get to play with him every once in a while on the weekends. But ever since I picked up a club, I'm like, "This is it." I played basketball, football, baseball when I was younger, but being 5'9" and 160 pounds, there's not too many other sports I would have made it professionally. So thankfully, golf was the one that stuck for me. And yeah, I mean, I remember just growing up as a kid too. I played with all these older kids, and they were good golfers, but they never wanted it the same way as me. So it was kind of cool. Just I've always had that chip on my shoulder, like I want to be at the next level and beat whoever I can. So that kind of stuck with me and stayed with me to the professional level.
Yeah, you had a very good junior career, in particular around Michigan. As I followed you for some time. I know on social media recently, but and then obviously at Michigan State, and Vork that connected us, Mike Vorkapich, our good friend up there. Um, but what was the decision or the thought process that was going through your mind? Because you're obviously a very good junior. Why stay in Michigan when you had opportunities, I'm sure, to go to more golf powerhouse type schools in the South where you could play year round? What was going on in your head at that time?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of moving factors. Obviously, you're looking at scholarship, you're looking at how do I fit in as a team on this team, coach, and then even like the ability to play. So I remember there was a few schools that were SEC or powerhouse schools that I was looking at, and they all were kind of hit me with well, we have some scholarship, but we don't know, if you'll play and all this stuff. And going to visit Midwest schools. I visited Michigan State. I'm from Ann Arbor area, so I actually grew up being a Michigan fan. But my brother, he's a year and a half older than me. He was already committed to Michigan State, and I got to go with him on all of his visits and got to go up there, hang around the team, see the culture. And then for me, it turned into a no-brainer. I fell in love with the school. Even, like I said, being a Michigan fan, I never pictured myself going to be a Spartan. And then the more I hung around, more I got to see the team, and then know that I was going to get playing time and be able to develop into the player I am today was huge. So it was, I mean, facility too, coaching staff. There were so many good factors about Michigan State where it turned into, this is for me, and I'm used to the Midwest winters, so it's not as big of a deal as I thought it would be. So it was obviously the best decision of my life.
Was there any reservation that you had inside your own head that maybe you didn't discuss with others to say, look, since I was a kid, I have the dream of playing professional golf. And even though these things that, excuse me, that I see and I fit in here, but was there any reservation that being in a colder climate, a northern climate, was not going to be the most advantageous for you? Or were there other things that you found that they had in their program that you didn't think it was going to make that, and obviously didn't make that big of a difference?
Yeah, I mean, going to a colder program, you're going to get a little bit behind mentally, because those kids get no snow all year and they can do whatever they want, wintertime. But at the same time, Michigan State had such a great thing of when we're out of the off season, we'd travel to Naples, California. We'd be all over the map every weekend. So really, you'd miss out, a few days a week on being able to hit off grass sometimes. But in reality, it was way easier than I expected it to be because December time when we're off, I'd usually go down to Florida and hang out with my swing instructor for a while. So it actually, for me, I ended up getting the best out of it. And then on top of it, too, being from the Midwest, it kind of puts a chip on your shoulder. I mean, you don't have the same season as the rest of the guys do. And it feels like golfers in the North are a little disrespected as far as, everyone who's good is from down south, the West Coast, whatever. So it feels like it makes you want to earn it more and gives you that grit. So that's the one thing I loved about Michigan State in the Midwest, that it kind of embodies that.
I had Ben Shear was on just a couple weeks ago, the trainer. He's trained, I think, more guys in more professional golfers than anybody else. At least that's what we were discussing in the show. And Ben's in the New Jersey area, and he said that one of the benefits of being in a northern climate, especially for younger golfers, and older golfers should take some notice of this as well, was you actually forced to take time off of your game, which now allows you to spend more time on your body, which is you're not getting the repetitive wear and tear of just beating balls. And living in South Carolina now for 3 decades, I have a full understanding of that, and so does my body. Um, but there are benefits that maybe people aren't as aware of, that you are able to work on your flexibility, mobility, strength, whatever you need to work on, but you're not wearing out your body and just swinging all the time. You're getting strong where you need to. You're getting flexible where you need, and you get a break. But and to your point, you do come out of there with, well, we're not getting the respect we deserve. So you have that inner drive to prove to everybody, hey, we're not, we're not lagging behind by any means, just because we're in a northern school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was incredible too. I took a COVID year, so I was there for 5 years. But I remember pretty much every season we would actually play better in the spring, coming off of that break where we hadn't seen grass, than we would in the fall where you had all summer time to prep. And it's kind of speaks to what you're saying. You got time to take care of your body. You got time to work on the fundamentals and not worry about I want to go out and shoot 65 every time I play. It's like, no, we're not going to see the course for a while. So you could actually work on that big swing change you need and not stress about it. So yeah, I agree. There are a ton of benefits to having some time off. And I mean, speaking for myself right now, with having shoulder surgery 5 weeks ago, it's nice to get a little time away and, refresh, and it makes you hungry and makes you want it more.
Do you ever think back on that, or use that as your professional now, to where, you know, and I didn't get to the level you did, but I did play professionally. And I know that one of the mistakes that I made, as well as a number of friends of mine, was you constantly think you always have to go hit balls. You always have to go putt. You have to stay out there 8 hours a day. And if you're not hitting balls, then you're getting worse. But you're actually, you're not doing any good if you're ingraining the wrong habits, or just thinking that you have to play more. So as you go up the pyramid, and players get better and the competition gets stronger, do you find yourself falling into the trap of thinking I have to practice all the time, instead of going back to say, hey, when I was in school, we had time off, and now I could dedicate it to some other things, like my body, or my the way I think about it. I can kind of dissect my own game and develop that way. Do you use that to your advantage now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting balance because one thing too, I mean, you play amateur golf and you travel a lot, but it's still not every week where it is in professional golf where, you could play up to 40 weeks a year. Even some guys go beyond that if they're crazy. But I mean, you kind of find what works for you and the balance. And that's kind of what blew my mind. Even starting off, I played some PGA Tour events as an amateur, and you go on the range and you expect every guy to be there from sun up to sundown because they're the best of the best. And it's not the reality. Now there are guys who do it, but you learn that there's all these things now with nutrition and energy and all this stuff about conserving. So some of these guys are so methodical when they practice that when they're out there, they might only be out there for an hour after round, but they're making every minute of that count versus, the guys in college, they'll try to hit balls for 4 hours, but they're
Hmm.
not working on anything. They're just banging balls to bang balls. So I think one thing since I turned pro is, yeah, it's just getting more methodical with my practice and, making it meaningful, So yeah, I love hitting balls. I love being out there. There's guys who have done it for 20 years who are still traveling every week and you see them and they still have that same passion, which is cool. But it's kind of just completely blown my mind because when you got out on tour, all the rookies I noticed were grinding for their lives. They're hitting balls nonstop. And then the guys who have a few wins under their belt, it's like vacation for some of them. I'm like, this is the reality of tour, but it's obviously I learned, it's just all about who the player is. And, one of my favorite guys out there was Patrick Reed because he is so methodical, but he worked harder than anyone I'd seen out there. And I think that's one cool thing to see some of the best guys in the world that not only, they're better than everybody, but they're more driven. Like that's a guy who's hard to beat. And I think those are the guys I respect the most coming from the Midwest, growing up in a public course setting and kind of trying to earn everything I have. Those are the guys I look up to.
Yeah, especially in a sport like golf where you're playing um, multiple days in a row, and it's as much about the endurance that you have enough gas in the tank as you get to the final back nine of the on a final day, as it is to hitting balls. As you mentioned, some of your teammates used to hit balls 4 hours a day. It's like, well, how much gas are you going to have in your tank when you're running in the red? Whether you realize or not. And for me, I didn't realize how intense I was playing professional golf until I was off for 3 months, and then you like you're probably experiencing now, and that you're like, my God, I was so, because that's the environment you're in. I mean, you're at an extremely high level, top 0.5% of the people who play your sport in the world, but um, to have that, and like you said, the guys like Patrick or the guys that are doing really well, they will go very intense for an hour, and then that's it. They know exactly what they need to work on. They get it done, and then they know that the game comes in waves. Hopefully your wave is on a continual incline, but there's ups and downs along the way, and you know that it's going to come back, and you need to have that energy to push a little bit maybe in that final round or that back nine instead of burning up everything you can when it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I remember just speaking from, going from college golf straight to live. I mean, you go from playing against some of the best AMs in the world to some of the best pros in the world is a huge jump. But I mean, we would carry 36 holes, the clubs on my back, and I would feel fine the next day. I was like, no problem. I could do this all day. And then I go to pro golf. I got a caddy. We're only playing 18 holes, and I get done with 18 holes, and I'm dying. I'm like, it's just a difference. And some of it's mental energy too, which I used to
Mm-hmm.
always knock on guys when they would be like, well, I need to sit this week out. It's a lot going on. I'm like, you're just playing golf. I do this every day. But once you get in their shoes and, you play 8 weeks in a row and it's like, yeah, I'm only playing 18 holes a day in practice round days. It's usually just nine, but it adds up and it's amazing. Just the mental energy combined with, the physical aspect of making sure your body's ready to go every time. It does build on you. And I'm 25 and I hate to say it, I am getting soft out here. So it's it's kind of funny how life changes once you're in their shoes, but it's definitely a learning curve that you learn how to manage your body and all the expectations around it.
Yeah, I want to get into LIV, but I'd like to talk about, because you obviously you won the U.S. Amateur in 21, and you were down, if I remember correctly, you were down about three down
Yep, three down with nine to
with nine
play.
holes to go. So what was the trigger that got you? Or did you just hit a couple shots and you started to develop the feel, or that you were missing, or what was it that just seemed to flip the light switch for you?
Yeah, I just remember the second 18 I came out and I was making some loose swings. I was holding on to it, missing a lot of shots wide right. And I remember going to the back nine thinking, we're not playing good golf really. It was, let's try to play some good golf. I remember setting a goal for myself that back nine, let's play it 4 under, which at Oakmont 4 under on any nine is insane. So I was like, let's just try to play stroke play in our head and get to that 4 under and just don't worry about what he's doing. And I just remember finally on number 10 making a good swing on the tee ball where I got cleared through it. And then the iron shot, same thing, got through it, stuck it, made a birdie there. He gave me one on the 11th hole with the 3 putt. And then all of a sudden momentum starts going your way. And, it goes from feeling like you're stuck to all of a sudden like, oh, I got this. And for me, it was, yeah, it was the in your head, you're like, come on, let's keep digging. And then all of a sudden you're in the lead and I'm 2 up with 3 to play, or 2 up. Yeah, 2 up with 3 to play. And all of a sudden you're thinking, don't gag it now. So it's funny how that goes in your head. But fortunately was able to get it done. But it was, yeah, I still remember every shot, every yardage. I mean, everything from that second 18. So it's crazy what sticks in your head as a golfer, but by far the coolest experience of my life.
Isn't that crazy? You can forget your girlfriend's or your wife's birthday like nothing, but you can recall shots that you hit in tournaments, whether you were a junior or, obviously winning the USAM is one of the biggest accomplishments in the game. You can remember shot by shot by shot what the wind was doing and everything else, like specific details. But you can't remember some of the simplest things like, oh shit, I forgot to bring her flowers today. Golfers are just a rare breed like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I tell my parents they're still kind of managing me in like adult life, but there's so many things I forget to do as an adult, oil change, whatever. And it's like I tell them I got selective memory. You put it golf stuff in front of me, I got it. Anything else in life, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I had to do that today. So yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
Now you had mentioned it, at your size, 5'9", 160 pounds. In as golf seems to be attracting, Bryson, I think, kind of brought this to the forefront. Bigger, but let's just say more athletic, for lack of a better terminology. We'll use Bryson, we'll use Brooks, Ernie Els back in my era, and Phil, that was your team captain. I mean, these are some bigger type guys are playing, and they have, let's say, they have more horsepower. So going into Michigan State and knowing that you want to play pro, and knowing, Vork that you trained under. Because he said you would walk into the gym and talk some serious smack to, and Michigan State doesn't. They're at that time they were really good at football. They're really good at basketball, and to walk in at 5'9", 160 when you got guys in there 6'6", 300, 6'10", 260. So how first of all and I'll give him a little plug here. How did he help you? Gain some strength and build up your body, and then where did the smack talk start coming from?
Yeah, I mean, Vork is a beauty. He's one of a kind. He had been there forever, and he's he's one of those guys. I feel like you have to talk smack to him for him to respect you. If you don't talk smack to him, I feel like he doesn't respect you. So, I mean, having him as a strength and conditioning coach for a few years was awesome. I mean, going in there, obviously super knowledgeable of, how the body moves, working with multiple sports and, even golf for many years. He knows how the body functions and, what we needed. So I thought he did an awesome job in, programming and making sure that our routines made sense. And we would always be building on specific things and doing the right things as far as mobility and getting stronger and bigger. So, work was awesome. I mean, favorite trainer I had while I was there, great dude. So, yeah, I mean, he just made an environment where I felt free to talk smack. Let's put it that way. So that's what kept me talking smack.
Yes, he is definitely an encourager, or maybe an instigator is a better way to say it.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we've been friends since we were about 15, so I know that he likes to do that stuff, and he'll talk some serious game himself.
No, absolutely. He's one of a kind. I mean, yeah, that was nonstop. You walk into the gym at 6 a.m. or 5:30, whenever we started, and he would be talking shit right away. So you had to bring it. So I made sure I did every day.
And I know that size alone is not a predictor of swing speed. And we've seen that on the PGA Tour, on LIV, on the World Long Drive Tour. Jamie Sedlowski was a multiple champion. A very good friend of mine was the senior. He made it to the Worlds a number of times, and the one year he got there, and he's your height. He's 5'9". I think he was 157 or 155, and he hit one 426. I think pound for pound, he had edged Jamie out by like a tenth of a yard. So it's not, size is not just a predictor of the ability to swing the club fast. So and obviously you're at the levels you're playing at and the levels that you've been successful at, you obviously have enough horsepower and speed and distance to do well. So was that, have you always have speed, or was it something that you developed along the way, or you found that, hey, I'm going to need this and I'm going to start practicing or getting better at this skill now? Because
Yeah, so finding speed's an interesting balance. The past few years, especially going from college to live, it was never a thought in my mind in college. Like, yeah, you always want to hit it far, and you'll go in the TrackMan room and try to see how fast you could get it to. I remember in college, wintertime, that'd be like, all right, let's just lash at it for fun. And I remember getting it to 125 one time, and that was like stoked about it. But I mean, in reality, if I try to swing it at 125 every time, right now with my build, that ball's going sideways. So it's all about, fine tuning speed with dispersion. And I remember my first year on Live, I talked to Bryson a few times about it because I was trying to go for that where I kind of cruise around 115 when I'm all good and healthy. And I wanted to get around 120 because 115 is fine. That's tour average. You
mm-hmm.
could play there. But 120, the guys who win majors, there's a trend. A lot of guys are higher ball speeds. It's an advantage major weeks. But I mean, one thing though that he kind of told me, he's like, when I swung harder, my dispersion went down. That was some of the methods of the madness. So that's what made him hit it hard because he was saying, you can only hit it, you can only swing it as fast as you could deaccelerate. If you can't, if your body can't get through the ball, you're screwed. So I remember, while chasing this, you obviously got to work with a trainer, and then the stack system was huge for everybody. That was
Yes.
one of the big things. But really, it's just about being as efficient as you can, and then being able to tolerate those speeds your body. So one thing too, as soon as I got down to Florida, I started working with Colby Wayne. He's Tiger's trainer, Max Homa, JT. I mean, Fleetwood, he's got a zillion guys, but just talking with him about it, learning that knowledge, there's so many good things. Every guy's trying to get bigger, stronger, faster. So it's been a slow process for me, and looking forward to getting back to it in January when I could fully swing a club again right now. But yeah, it definitely is a big factor in getting better and bigger, stronger, faster every day.
How do you, is it as a professional athlete in today's era, because and in particular in golf, because that is such a, that as Bryson showed, it's a skill that can be developed. But there also is a fine line between pushing yourself in the gym and not injuring yourself, because as you injure yourself, you're out. If you're out, you're not, you get your medical exemption, but you're also falling behind. And I'm going to be 52 in a couple of weeks. Not this is obviously different than your age, but the falling behind part as you get older increases. So you lose it faster and it's harder to gain it back. But when you're at your age, at your level you're at, all the players that are out there are still improving. Now, that's not to say you're not improving while you're recovering from injury, because you can think about things. Maybe you tweak your course management or you adjust your short game or what have you. But my point is, if you're not playing, it's harder to get to the goals that you want to. So how do you and Colby work with pushing yourself, but not to the point where you're running a risk of injury?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it too is obviously you're training specific to you, so you're not in there just bench pressing if your body's not capable of it. So the biggest thing now is mobility, longevity of career. You're talking about injury free. That's kind of one of Kobe's specialties. He's had a lot of guys have a lot of success, but it's about pushing yourself and trying to get bigger, stronger, faster by also not ruining yourself too. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword, but mobility is the biggest thing I'd say as far as, being able to stay flexible, limber. That's what keeps you around the longest period of time. So, I mean, even these guys, I mean, Joaquin Neiman, for example, if you look at him, there's not a lot of muscle mass, but he hits it a mile. But I've seen that dude in the gym and he looks like, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. He's the most limber guy I've ever seen. He was doing some of these stretches that I normally do, and his legs like above his head. I'm like, I don't have that. So there's certain levels to things, but yeah, I mean, mobility and just yeah, a lot of guys are pretty in tune. I wouldn't say diet. I hate to say it. Like a lot of guys talk about diet and stuff like that, but it's really hard when you're traveling a lot. And I think sometimes guys give a little bit of exaggeration on that. But I try my best to eat healthy, but it doesn't always work. Um, But yeah, just staying consistent. That's the biggest thing. I mean, consistency is key, whether it's practice, gym time, whatever, just finding that routine and sticking to it, because that's really what, finding what your body needs and doing it best is what's going to get you the best results.
Is it hard sometimes that you fight your desire to want to do more, but you know that you have, because you have good people around you, that you have to stick to the plan that your coach has put in place? Is there a back and forth sometimes in your own head that you fight?
The nice part about being young is I never really get Colby never tells me let's take it easy. It's usually me saying like, "Hey dude, we got to tee off tomorrow. Like I don't want to be sore." Actually to him, because he also trains football players, baseball players. Like he's got guys in Major League NFL, so I'm like, "Dude, I'm not the same as them." So sometimes I got to let him know. But when I'm home, off season, especially a time like now, like whatever we need to do legs wise to get bigger. I mean, if you look at a guy like Brooks Koepka, he's one guy who's put the work in over the years. So that's just kind of the level golf's getting at, like you said. So it's kind of turning into I have to do it, but at the same time, short game is really what wins tournaments.
Mm-hmm. I got to shift gears a little bit and ask you, because you played in two of the biggest events in the world and at two of the greatest venues. You played in the 22 Masters and the 22 U.S. Open. So, uh, what was it? What was it like driving down Magnolia Lane?
It was the coolest thing in the world. The first time I got to do it actually was with my two coaches at Michigan State, Casey Lubon and Dalen Ellis, who happened to be my caddy for the full time I went pro and at Augusta that week. But we got invited by a member who's actually a Michigan State alumni. So we took a little trip one weekend, and then you get through the gate. Once they let you in, you're like, this is unreal. Like everything is perfect out there. That's the best way to describe it. Once you get on property, everything's perfect. The service, the staff is awesome. You get out like turf conditions, you can't find a piece of grass out of place out there, which is blew my mind. Like no weeds on property, nothing seems out of place. It's like it's fake. It's so perfect. It's fake, but it is the coolest thing in the world, because you're sitting there and you're like, I worked my whole life, and this is everything I dreamed for, to play in the Masters, and it finally happening was like I couldn't believe it. Still, that whole week I was just like awestruck.
Yeah, the two things that everybody that goes there, players, because I've got obviously I have friends that have played in the Masters, and just friends who go there for the first time, and to a person, they will say one of two things or both. That one, they never realized that it was as hilly as it is, and two is everybody at some point within the first, let's say, 20 minutes that they're there, has to stop and bend down and touch the grass because it looks so fake. Like, this can't be real. This cannot look this good and be real.
Yeah, you'd be accurate on that one. I was just like, we were there in October, and it's not tournament conditions where it's rolling out of 13, but it's still super pure in the grass, like you said, nothing out of place. So yeah, in the hills too. I mean, TV doesn't do it justice. You don't have one flat iron shot all day. There's never a shot where you don't feel like you're on edge. I mean, tee balls. I remember I used to watch it, and I was like, how does everyone bogey number one? Until you get up on that tee ball and the fairway's only about 20, 25 yards wide, and you got a gallery on the left and right side of the tee box that feels like if I mishit this, I'm killing someone. That's kind of in the back of your head, but it's just such a surreal place, and by far like the coolest property in golf.
Yeah, and the first hole, if you'd never been there, it looks like they buried about 4 elephants and then covered them with dirt and threw turf on top of it. I mean, just to give an idea of the undulation, or the because the green is raised, if I'm not mistaken, but it's all these rolling little mounds in it, and it's like, you want me
Yeah,
to hit the ball
it's
where?
yeah. I mean, looking at all the sections in the green, you got these pins that whenever they put it on the right and it's miss right, it's like you got to hit a pretty dang good bump to get it close, and then left. If it rolls off left, it's the same thing. It's going 40 feet away if you don't hit a great bump shot. So it's like all these greens, it's so penal when you miss it. I mean, I remember I was talking to Patrick Reed after the Masters, and he's like, there's certain pins like I'll aim at and I almost try to miss the green on purpose because I know the chip's easier than the putt. And I was out there, I mean, I got over par fast, and I just started flag hunting and shot the fastest 81 or something ever. And just for reference, that was the only 80 I'd shot since senior year of high school. And of course, it's in the Masters. So that tells you how hard the course is right there.
I bet did you walk off thinking, how did I just do that? Like, you didn't think you played that bad, and next thing you know, you're 9, 10 over par.
Yeah, it turned into when you're playing so bad, you're just trying to get out of the way of the guys in your group. I play with Justin Thomas and Hideki, and I was just like ready to apologize after him. I'm like that. I wanted to be like, that's not normally me, but it's just you try to soak it all in. At the same time, I was enjoying the experience, and yeah, it didn't go how I wanted it to, but I got to play in a Masters. I got to live out my dream, and now the goal is to get back there and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty to look forward to.
And then the U.S. Open that year, was it at the Country Club?
Yeah, it was. So it was at Brookline. I got John Rahm and Morikawa. It was a cool group too. I mean, that's a cool part of winning the USAB. You get the featured group in all the majors. So that
Uh-huh.
was definitely one of the perks of it. I mean, Rahm is an awesome dude. Watching him on TV doesn't do him justice because you watch him throw a club, drop a bunch of swear words, but he was talking to me 2 seconds after yelling the loudest F bomb you've ever heard, and he'll just be shooting shit about life, and you're like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. So awesome, dude.
Yeah, it seems like he gets it out, and then once it's out, he's just normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a
Absolutely. He
pretty
was
good
he
way to
was my
do it.
favorite. Yeah.
That your transition from amateur golf to pro, or from when you went Michigan State, you're done there, and then obviously you had won the amateur, but um, was there did were you considering LIV at that point, or did they come to you and it was a kind of a spur of the moment, or what was the thought process behind going that direction versus the what we'll call it the traditional direction for someone at your level and accomplishment?
Yeah. I remember, so I won the AM, played in the Masters the next spring as an amateur, and then played RBC in Hilton Head a week later, the tour event as an amateur, and my agent's like, hey, I verbally committed to an agent at the time for when I turned professional.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sign anything for a professional deal as an amateur. So I was kind of verbally committed to these guys, but they started working for me for pro deals once I was out of college. And he's like, hey, just so you know, like LIV contacted us. This is the week after the RBC. And he's like, do you want to have a meeting with them? They kind of have an offer for you. We'll see where it goes. And I'd seen articles online at the time about, they were going to start coming after amateurs and all this stuff. So I was like, cool, sounds sweet. And they ran me through the meeting and kind of gave me the whole spiel. They're like 2 years status. I'm like, hey, that's right there is good enough for me. That's the one thing about playing on tour. It's cutthroat. You got to earn it all, and the ability to be out of college and sign for 2 years status.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much unheard of before. The PGA Tour youth system gives guys status now. It's great, but I wasn't going to make that system, and I had an ability to sign for status, and obviously, coming from just starting up, not having money or anything at that time yet, it was a big perk. So there was two things for a young guy. And also they said, you're going to play in a team format with some of the best players in the world. So they told me, they wouldn't tell me who they had committed already from the tour, but they're like, we have some names. So I was like, you know what, sign me up. Let's do it. And it didn't take much convincing. And on top of that, I like to throw in there like we don't have any cut lines. And I was like, perfect. I'm 0 for 4 right now in the PGA Tour and majors. Like, let's sign me up, no cuts. I'm there. So it was a perfect storm, and it's no, I mean it was a whirlwind because I mean even after so we got done with regionals at Texas A&M's course. All of a sudden, I'm hopping on a plane a few days later to go play in the Memorial or sorry, go play Colonial in Texas right after that, then go play in the Memorial, and then straight to LIV, straight to the U.S. Open. So I had like a whirlwind of 5 weeks where I went from amateur golf, PGA Tour, LIV, major. So it was like
Wow.
it all happened like that, and it was a cool stretch, that's for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't really get much better than that, I don't think.
No, it does not.
I mean,
Believe
I
me,
mean,
I can tell you now.
I mean, the highest I got was back nationwide back then, Corn Ferry now, and then the very next week because I didn't have status, and I know how important status is. I mean, back when I was playing in the late '90s and 2000s, um, your goal was to minimum get to final stage because you were going to be at least on the Corn Ferry tour. If you got there, you would have some status and you knew where you're going. You didn't have to really do Mondays as much unless you were doing it on weeks that your reshuffle didn't get you in. You weren't having to go back to mini tours and just slug it out in that life. So it was always status, but my one event, my girlfriend went with me. I was in the Corn Ferry event in Raleigh. And then the very next week, I'm playing a mini tour event at Charlotte National out in the middle of nowhere. And she's looking around like, and I said to her, I'm just watching her for a few minutes. And I said, welcome to the minor leagues. Because you go from free lunches. And again, it's Corn Ferry. It's not LIV. It's not PGA Tour. You obviously had the royal treatment. So I could only imagine that what that must have been like.
Yeah, I mean it has been a whirlwind, and a lot of guys too. I stay in touch with all of them now. It's kind of a good joke, but they go, "You went from the top of the food chain to now you're back to the start."
Mm-hmm.
This year I played Asian Tour, which is awesome. That's like our Corn Ferry Tour for LIV, but obviously all based in Asia. I played a lot of mini tour events in the U.S., so I got to see both sides of it. Where last year I was flying private to a lot of events with the guys and stuff like that, to now I'm flying economy to Asia because I'm like, you look at these. I mean, you look at some of the prices for a ticket. You're like $10,000. I am not doing that.
It's
So
amazing.
it's pretty incredible. So I've gotten to see both sides of it. But at the end of the day, you're just chasing a dream. So yeah, I mean, the live life was phenomenal. It's by far, they treat their players phenomenal. I have nothing that I could ever say against them because of how their player treatment is phenomenal. So some really cool memories. I mean, the coolest part was just the relationships I made out there with the guys and still being able to be in touch with them all. I mean, last week I went to the live event in Chicago just to stop by and say hello to some guys because right now I got nothing else going on, and still being able to walk out there and talk to everyone like your best friends is pretty cool.
Yeah. When you signed with them, did you have any inkling or any idea that you were going to be on the High Flyers?
No, I mean, honestly, so year one, I started off, which the team was called the Niblets, which is now the Range Goats. But actually, the week one, year one, it was sweet because it was like NFL draft where they get up on the stage and they're like, the fireball select, whatever. So there was 3 rounds in 12 teams, and I went second round. And Sergio picked me second round, and I'm sitting there thinking, you just made a mistake, dude. When he picked me second round, that's all I remember thinking because I'm like, I'm not a second round pick right now. But so yeah, week one I was a fireball, so Sergio Garcia was my captain, which is pretty cool. And then everything kind of got bounced around. Eventually, I got broomed out from the fireballs after week one, and he got all the Spanish dudes. So I went up and asked him, "Is it because I don't speak Spanish? I'm off the team." But it was kind of cool how it all got sorted out over time. And yeah, the end of year one, I ended up, which is the range coach, Bubba's team. He was the non-playing captain, and it was me, Harold Varner, Hudson Swafford, and Turk Pettit. And it was a pretty cool team. We didn't have much success, but I remember we're in Saudi Arabia. I hadn't really gotten confirmation that I was going to be back on the range goats for year two. And I went to Starbucks, and Phil was sitting there having coffee with Cameron Tringali. And I'd played with Phil once or twice already in events. And I remember in Bangkok, I played with him when I played really well. I shot 65 with him, bogey free. It was awesome. So he's like, "Hey, if you want to sit down and have coffee with us," I'm like, "Absolutely. It's Phil Mickelson. I'm not going to say no to having coffee with him. What else am I going to do? Sit in my hotel room?" So I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they're kind of just, shooting shit, nothing too personal. And then he asked me, he's like, "Hey, what team are you going to be on next year?" And I said, "No one's really picked me up yet." And kind of laid a hint down. He's like, "Cool, I'll let you know." And a week later, my agent calls me. He's like, "Hey, Phil wants you on the team." I'm like, "Well, that's pretty sweet. Like, how are you going to say no to that one?" So it was phenomenal, having him as a mentor and just seeing firsthand, he's one of the guys I grew up watching on TV where he hits shots other people can't. And, he's 54 or around that ballpark
Mm-hmm.
now, and he still does it. So it's pretty incredible to watch someone like that firsthand and get to learn from him, all the knowledge and, skills he's developed over time, and being able to pass it off to me is something that's really stuck with me.
Now, he had you out to San Diego to his house, didn't he, to help you with
Yeah.
short game?
Yep, a couple times. I mean, yeah, he was very open with, "Hey, if you want to come out and whatever." And yeah, I went out to San Diego a few weeks before the season started last year, and didn't know him that well, but he's like, "Come on out." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll fly out." And didn't know what to expect. He's like, "Just come to my house, and then we're gonna play some golf. We'll do some practicing in my backyard." And I show up, and his backyard's like a college golf facility. I mean, it is sweet. So I'm like, "Yeah, I want to play better golf so I can get something like this. This is this is pretty cool." So I just remember he's like, "Any questions?" right away. And I was like, "Well, let's, do some short game or whatever." And he's pretty much giving me a chipping lesson firsthand in his backyard. I'm like, how much money would someone pay to have this experience? And, I can ask him any time of the year to do it. So I thought that was like the coolest part about being on his team.
Is there anything that you're allowed to tell us that he showed you with that he wouldn't get too pissed off at you
Honestly,
about?
you know what's funny though is a lot of the stuff now he's big into like getting bigger into YouTube and stuff like that. So he loves like firsthand, showing people what's up. And I mean, just his chipping technique, where the hands got to stay forward, the ball position
Hmm.
is so big. I mean, those were the two biggest things. Is the hands always got to stay up. You let the hands get behind. There's only certain times where he'd allow that, but everything is ball position and weight dependent. That was the biggest thing, and what he showed me, and the shots that it enables him to hit. I remember we played this game. It's called six up. It's whoever gets it closer, gets a point, and if you get 6 points, you win. But he took me to the side of the green at these little short side flops from like 10 feet from the hole, and I had no chance. And I was just sitting there like, how the heck do you do this? And by the end of the day, he had me hitting those shots. So it's like things like that the average golfer doesn't understand that a guy like Phil picks up right away. Those were kind of the biggest things to me.
Sound like he's a pretty good mentor, team captain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he loves it too, and that was the coolest thing to me was how he would always go out of his way. Actually, if you were struggling or if you had a question to ask him, he would always take the time to to either sit there and watch you hit shots or be the guy to answer a question. So I thought, as far as a team captain, he went over and beyond what I expected out of him. So it
Hmm.
was. There's still like a lot of things. I have a little notebook and I wrote down a lot of stuff that I have from him that I'll be able to go back and use for the rest of my career.
Yeah, especially when he was getting ridiculed so hard by the golfing world in general. For him to take the time to take someone like you and say, hey, come on out here. I want to help you. I'm going to invest time and effort into you, and I want you to do well. Um, it speaks to a lot of the character. Whether someone likes him or not, or a lot of people were posting online. Of course, online is a cesspool that it is. It's like I used to be a huge Phil fan. I can't stand him, and he's a sellout. He's this or that. It's like, yeah, but that's just what they see or what they read. It's not the person that people like know on a personal level that he's willing to do these things. And again, obviously, you're the U.S. Amateur Champ. You're not a nobody, but he wants you to excel at that level that is difficult for everybody. It's to me, it speaks a lot about his character.
Yeah, I mean, awesome guy. And even, when I was in San Diego, he'll take the time. And if there's college kids at the club or, younger kids, he'll play with kids of, high school age, college, mini tour guys. He'll play with everybody and help them out. So I thought it was cool, even in his community, to see him, be willing to help anyone out who's willing to listen. So, I mean, I think that speaks volumes to his character that he's a great guy and he loves the game. So, on top of it too, anytime you could get him into a match, he loves that. That's his favorite thing. Besides his, actually, I think his favorite thing was beating me in the practice round as opposed to actually beating me in the tournament. So, but he's a heck of a competitor. That's what makes him who he is. I mean, I'm sure he could probably tell you how many times he's beat me at this point, but it feels like when he wins, it's his favorite thing.
Is there anything about him that that the public gets completely wrong, or that behind the scenes that people don't know about that's something that's really cool?
I mean, it just as a human being, I think an awesome guy, super knowledgeable dude. I mean, obviously, people you see some interviews. He's a smart dude, but he's actually like brilliant. I mean, he knows everything about everything is the best way to describe it. Some of the team conversations we've had, whether it's about like wine or food or something in golf or just any random sports fact or whatever, he's on top of it. I mean, I can't say there's really anything I know that he doesn't know. Let's put it that way. He's a really intelligent dude, and that's what blew my mind. I mean, just the IQ level of him compared to the average golfer, he's well
Hmm.
above it.
That So you had mentioned that you're playing Asian Tour now, and I believe it was end of last season you got relegated. Can you just maybe describe or give a somewhat of a definition for some people who don't know what that terminology might mean? What does that mean for LIV Golf and the players?
Yeah, so I mean, getting relegated is pretty much like losing your tour card. That's the best way to describe it. So our Asian tour is our Corn Ferry tour. So they play obviously mainly in Asia, Middle East. We'll go into Africa a little bit, but it's run awesome. The events are great, strong fields, and that's kind of going to be now the stepping stone to live for a few guys, and that's what gets you also in the promotions event, which is our Q school at the end of the year. So there's a lot to go into Asia, but it's crazy coming from the U.S. to Asia for most of my events. The travel time is nuts. I mean, I think my shortest trip this year was 26 hours. So it's a haul, but it's worth it. I mean, I love it out there. Um, it's golf. You know, you're competing at the highest level. The money's good too. So there's a lot of awesome things about the Asian tour. And, you know, coming from the US, I think we're the most uncultured people there are. You know, US people like to stay in their bubble. That's what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And you get over there and you're thrown for a whirlwind because there's a lot going on. I went from, you know, pretty sheltered in the US to all of a sudden I got to learn how to call a taxi cab in Korea and all this stuff. You can't sometimes, you know, the language barrier is there a little bit, but English gets you by everywhere usually. So that's the nice part. But I've learned to enjoy it, and there's a lot of cool places I've stopped by in Asia.
Is it does it make it more difficult that it's not so much your golfing skill that is a challenge as it is going to another culture and as you know getting around or ordering food or what to eat or where to eat? Does that make it that you're, as we talked about earlier in the show, that you know you're burning a lot of mental energy when you're playing. Now you
Yeah.
compound it with being in a foreign country and having to get around and navigate and all those things. Does that make it more difficult for you compared to the guys you're playing against, or how do you view that?
You know, honestly, it's kind of funny, but it makes you, when you're out there, it makes you enjoy it more when you're on the course because that's like your bubble. That's your safe space. Because you're like, oh, I'm at the golf course. I'm in control here. I know what's going on. You know, so it makes it, you know, for me, I've really enjoyed it. You know, the travel part from the U.S. to getting there, it's not the most ideal, I'll admit that. But when I'm there, I've learned to enjoy it because, you know, just soaking it all in different foods, cultures, and see different stuff. And honestly, I've learned that there's Chili's or McDonald's just about everywhere in the world. So when I'm like not feeling it, they got some version of DoorDash everywhere, and I figure it out. I mean, I remember one trip. I forgot where we were at, but I had McDonald's like 6 days in a row. Which remember I was going back to diet. I'm like, yeah, I just couldn't. I couldn't do it in whatever country we're in. But I was like, all right, McDonald's. It's safe everywhere you go in the world. So, so yeah, that got me by. But yeah, I mean, you learn to enjoy it and soak it all in. And you know, I've met so many guys out there who are from Asia that they're like, oh no, this is no big deal. We'll walk here. We'll go here for dinner. And then I've had some of the best meals of my life for, you know, like $10, and you're like, this is
Wow.
great. So yeah, it's definitely a, you know, double-edged sword, but I love it.
What from amateur golf at Michigan State and winning the USAM to where you are now? What has been your biggest adjustment that you've had to make?
Biggest adjust, I mean, play style. When you're in college, the pins are more friendly. You know, the best way to describe it is you play like a knucklehead. You just fire at everything. You know, there's no this pin's the left side. You know, bogeys don't hurt as much in college golf as they do in professional golf. So just adjusting to the style of play. You know, the travel, doing a lot more things on your own. You know, where I'm booking all these flights on my own. You're doing a hotel and all this stuff. So
Mhm.
it changes. You know, life changes. You have to become more responsible. But I just say the playing style has been different. Other than that, you know, it's golf at the end of the day. You got to go. So making as few bogeys possible, as many birdies as possible, that's always the goal, and that'll never change.
Do you use any apps or anything that help you, like the decade system? You know, I've had Scott Fawcett on a couple times. We've talked about that. Are things like what he's doing helping guys at your level to get that extra shave off 2/10 of a stroke around when you get
Yeah,
into course management?
I've seen a lot of guys implement it. I'm personally not a decade guy. I've used Circles. It's, you know, an app to you just punch in, you know, your stats from the round, your putts, your distances, whatever, and it kind of helps you pick what you need to get better at. But I mean, honestly, I let my caddy do that a lot of the time.
Hmm.
I like just saying, you know, I could walk off the course and be like, we're not putting good right now, and I'm kind of more of, you know, when something's going wrong when you're at a high level, but at the same time, it's nice having those stats to, you know, help you realize what you need to work on. And I remember um, Alex Fitzpatrick and those guys, you know, Matt and Alex. Alex plays at my club in Florida, so I was asking about Matt. I'm like, you know, I heard a lot about his stats, and he's telling me he's got these statistics that tell him what he needs to work on 2 weeks before an event that helps him play his best for the event. And I'm like,
Wow.
there's certain guys who have that. I hate to say I don't have that, but there's certain guys that are that in tune. So it's really about finding what works best for you. So for me, yeah, I like stats. I mean, it's nice to tell you what's wrong, but at the same time, if I hit 8 wedges in a row and don't put them inside of 20 feet, I know that's what we got to go work on today. So it's really week by week. I feel like a lot of times.
At your level, when you're playing it as on one of the bigger tours in the world, how hard is it when you have people coming at you? Always, hey, we'd like you to do this. Can you help us with that? Here's this new product we have. How hard is it to learn how to say no?
Yeah, you definitely it develops over time. Now some guys are great at it. Me, I'm a yes man. So in the beginning I remember too, I did like every event I could, and then even showing up for the tour events, you get all these club reps approaching you, and I'd never had a Circle T in my life, and all of a sudden I got 5 of them. I'm like, oh, we putted with a different putter every event. I wonder why we're missing cuts. We're putting bad. So yeah, you kind of learn, you got to stick with what got you there as far as the golf club perspective. And then just, from saying no and stuff like that. I mean, it's really about finding that balance of, there's a lot of great things, charity events, stuff like that you want to be involved with, but at the same time, you got to make sure you have time to practice, do whatever. So I think for me, I was able to, to kind of tune it out over time and just, focus on what was important in the moment. And then, you know, when you have time available, make it happen. So I remember too, talking to a lot of guys the first year on Live, everyone has a charity, so I got roped into like 5 or 6 of them like week after week, and guys are like, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, it's a charity event. They're like, everyone has a charity, you got to figure out which ones you like. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, you pick and choose, and then you learn, people, I try to be good to people, and it is what it is, but I'll never regret, doing an event for charity. So
No,
it's
it's hard to pass up trying to help somebody.
absolutely, but at the end of the day, we're just golfers, we're people, so I have no problem doing, anything for anybody most of the time.
Well, in your opinion, because you were in the early stages of Live, you were there for the first couple of years, and you're on your way back there. So we're all assuming as soon as you heal up. Um, why do you think there was so much negativity towards it? Is it
Yeah, I mean, it's new, it's different. Obviously, it was a threat to the PGA Tour, and kind of just taking those big names away from the tour too. So there's a lot going on there, and it's understandable that there's a lot of turmoil about it, and a lot of uncertainty too. Even from the players' side, you had no idea what was going to happen week one, if it was even going to happen, even after you signed. And for it to actually happen was a huge relief to a lot of guys. I remember week one after we got done in London, like everyone was partying after the event, no matter what place you finished in. Which you'll never, we didn't see that after week one. You never saw that the rest of the time, but like just to just to see that, it was kind of cool to be on that side. But yeah, I mean, it definitely threw a mix in the golf world, and I mean, obviously, we all want to see some unity now. I think that's what makes the majors even better right now, is having everybody back in the mix makes it kind of that much more exciting now.
what do most people, because you saw it from the inside looking out, what do most people get wrong when they criticize Live?
I
That you
think the
wish you could
biggest
grab
thing,
them and shake them and say, no, that's not true.
yeah, when they talk about guys not caring because they signed for, $1 zillion, and, you're out there doing whatever. And that's the one thing that drove me nuts in the beginning. They, talk to me and be like, well, I mean, there was a few weeks where I beat some big names. I beat DJ, I beat Brooks one week, whatever. And they're like, well, they don't care anymore. I'm like, no, they care. Like, you
Yeah.
don't just show up. You're not a high level athlete. You don't just show up and say, oh, I'm just going to half ass it this week. You're full in. And I mean, to some guys, it feels like kind of from where Live started to now are grinding even harder. They're in year 2, 3 now, year 3 now. So that just shows you that they still care. And at the end of the day, you're a competitor. You want to win. That's what makes these guys so great. So, I mean, there's nothing, you know, that's the biggest one to me that really speaks out. And even like when they played on tour, a lot of these guys got paid, just to show up at certain events where, because they're a big name on tour, they give them money to make sure they're there at whatever event. So they've been doing this for years. And I mean, just seeing how bad some guys want it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think uh, Brandel, of course, he's the lead drummer for the anti-live establishment, and I think he posted something to the effect of this was going to happen. These guys were their games are going to fall off, et cetera, et cetera. And then Bryson goes ahead and does what he did last year, and then Brooks did what he did this year, and it's like I might even comment and tag him. I said, hey, I thought they were supposed to fall off, but and to your point, my response was also said that you can't take somebody who's been a competitor and then been a competitor at the highest level their entire life and just hit a switch and that shuts off. I don't care how much money you give them because the goal isn't the money. It was never the money. It was always to win at whatever they were doing or at a bare minimum improve. And even if somebody says when I get X amount of money, like I'm friends with Boo Weekly, and Boo said when he got $10 million, he was out. And here he is playing the Champions Tour. And if you follow them at all, he's having the time of his life. So it wasn't the money; it was the competition and the desire to improve and wanting to compete against other people at that level. So it's like this is somebody's DNA, and now it's been their DNA for 20, 30 years, 40 years, for 50 for the guys like Boo. And it's like you can't just change that because you've gotten this carrot of X amount of money. It doesn't. It's not how it works. And I think that guys like Brandel got that wrong. Now he might not admit it. He hasn't. Him not saying anything about it anymore after the last couple of years is enough for me. It speaks volumes to say he was wrong. I don't think he's going to come out and say that. But I agree with you. I mean, that's why I asked you. You saw it from the inside to where you and all these guys are working your ass off. And for someone to say, oh, they're just going to take the money and they're not going to compete anymore. Yeah. Well, that's not how it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember too, like even in the locker room setting, you see some guys have a bad week and just go ballistic in the locker room and smash half of their bag in. Like it still happens on live. I mean, I'm not gonna say who's done what, but I've seen some guys break their full set of irons in the locker room and just
Wow.
walk out, and they don't sit there scrolling through the leaderboard and going, "Oh, I finished in 38th this week. At least I made $130,000." They don't say that. They want to be up there at the top of the leaderboard, whether no matter what age, who it is, everyone wants to win.
Yeah, exactly. I'd have to assume that comments like that, and I'm not an anti-Brandel guy. I think his stance on live can be skewed a lot of the time. Um, but I don't think he's bad for golf. I think he at least speaks his mind. I have a lot of respect for that. I would rather have somebody speak their mind. In fact, I classify him as somewhat. Johnny Miller spoke his mind. Uh, Dick Vitale in basketball, he was not a cookie cutter type announcer. So I have a lot of respect for Brandel like that. But I would have to imagine that some of the words that came from that side of the argument that would really piss a lot of guys off that were on live. That and you don't have to tell stories. I'm not gonna put you on the spot like that. But I would have to imagine either in the locker room or at dinner, at breakfast, or on the range, some of the discussions would be very, very interesting to
Yeah,
say the least.
definitely. I mean, I know a lot of the guys had the kind of it's us against the world mentality out there because once you go to live, a lot of guys turn their backs on them, players or whatever, media included. So yeah, there was a lot of those discussions, and for me personally, I tried to stay out of them. Like my mentality to someone was like they were asking me about how I felt about the world golf rank and all this stuff. I'm like, listen, until I'm top 100 in the world, I'm not going to say anything. Like once you deserve, you get the ability to speak based on play. That's my philosophy. So when someone hands Rory or Mike or Brooks, Dustin, whoever, I'm like, yeah, they have the ability to speak. A guy like me, I just go with the flow. Once I start winning tournaments, that's when I'll speak up. But right now, I was happy to be there and just enjoying the ride.
Do you ever look back on a couple years ago and wonder if you would have gone the other direction, if how things might have been different, or have any second guesses?
Honestly, not really. Super happy with the decision I made, and I'm gonna be able to this year after once I'm back, fresh, ready to play again, I'll be able to chase Monday qualifiers and go for tour events. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer where I didn't really get penalized for it because I never had status.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just going from that, I got to play, 2 years with some of the better players in the world, learn firsthand in a team environment, and form these relationships and connections, that are lifelong. So for me, I lived done has done nothing but awesome things for me. So I'm super happy. I got to see, even though I didn't play how I wanted to play, I got to see what it takes to be at that highest level. And I think that's the coolest thing is, seeing firsthand, this is what I need to do and this is what I need to be able to do to get there. I think that's the biggest part of it.
So you don't fall into the classification because you were never a full blown member. That you still have the ability to go. Like if you were healthy, you could go to Q school. Well,
Yeah.
Corn
So
Ferry and how they
yeah.
do it now, it's different.
Yep. We'd be working on that. So yeah, I mean, I
Very cool.
just
Good
had
for you.
yeah, so everything's all good. And then obviously playing in Asia too. I have medical next year. So kind of the plan right now is, play Asia, chase some Mondays too in America when I'm home. So I'll be able to have a busy schedule next year. So looking forward to that part of it.
One of the big ones for me growing because I grew up in Utica, Sterling Heights area. So you were on the west side over in Canton. I was on the east side. But the Buick Open back then was always the circle on the calendar that you're going to go Monday qualify for the Buick Open.
Yep.
And I know that that's now on the Champions event because that's when all that those guys that was one of their tournaments. And but that was always a fun one to go to. So when I was playing, I would always go home for that. Unfortunately, Sean Pichetti cut me, and there was 400 guys for 4 spots, and I sat around all day. I think I shot 4 under, and he cut me in the third to last group, cut me by one. So, and I was in the
Oh.
fourth group off in the morning, and I sat there all day thinking I'm going to get in. I was like, finally, I'm getting in a PGA Tour. You know how many qualifiers I missed by one, and nope, there's another one missed by one again. But that was always a fun one for me.
Yeah, that's a cool place. That's yeah, I've gotten to play there many times, but yeah, I mean now we got the Rocket Mortgage. That's
Yeah.
that's the big one too for all the mini tour guys from Michigan and everyone with status. That's the one everyone comes back for every year. So
Where do they
just
do
seeing
the
that
Monday
event,
for that one?
it's rotated because they had it at Catkey and then at Orchards and then I think it was at Catkey again this year. No, it might have rotated, but I don't. They got it everywhere. So I mean, there's that's a good one where usually there's a Michigan guy in the hunt. I mean, Bo Briel, he's a Michigan guy. He lost 2 years in the playoff, and then Donnie Trosper made it 1 year, but it was COVID year, so that's the 1 year Michigan guy. Of course, he doesn't get the hometown crowd, but that's the one I want to play in. So that's kind of the goal.
Yes, always fun to play in front of your home crowd. I missed the Heritage here. That was when I was an assistant. I missed there. I four putted the 13th hole. I did one of those. Hey, let me get this out of your way and sidestepped and just tried to tap it in
Oh,
and ended up missing that year by one. Um, and then the next year by two, I bogeyed 3 of the last 4 to miss by two. So I've missed my hometown tour event 3 times by 2 or less shots. Those were hard pills to take. But enough about my career. What has been the biggest things that you've learned since turning pro? That if you could go back to talk to James coming out of college, that you'd sit down from him and say, here's these things I want to tell you about right now.
yeah, it's really just be the best version of yourself. Don't try to change who you are. And we talked about getting speed and stuff like that. And so, yeah, you can get little bumps, but don't try to be Bryson DeChambeau. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be Bryson. Rory's the same height and actually weight as me. He looks a little more ripped, but same height and weight. But it's like, okay, he still hits it way farther than you will in your career. So like, let's try instead of like I said, I'm at 115. Let's get it to 118. Let's be content cruising there because that's still above average. So it's the small things, but it's really own your game. That's what I've learned. I mean, talking to the guys who are older and who have done it for years, and maybe the guys who haven't won 50 times like Phil, or like one thing I remember talking to Richard Bland, and he's played professionally forever. He's always been kind of like on the cut line. It seemed like of keeping his card, losing it, but he's always
Mm-hmm.
around. And he told me he's just like perfect your game because I mean I played with him a billion times in LIV the past couple of years, and you watch him hit a ball, you watch him, roll it, and you're like mechanically it doesn't look perfect, but man, he makes it work. So it's the things like that, and 100 yards in, everyone says it. You got to chip and putt if you want to play at the highest level. Even the Rorys, the Brysons, the Brookses, they could chip and putt like no other. I mean, that's really what makes it happen. So short game and owning it and being yourself is really the biggest thing to making it.
How important do you think being comfortable not only in the environment that you're in, whether it's in Asia or on Live or PGA Tour, and or with yourself plays a role in your ability to play well?
I'd say definitely, believing in yourself is the biggest thing. Confidence, that's really one thing I've learned. You talk to any guy out there, and yeah, they might joke around and say I'm a horrible chipper or whatever, like Hovland does, but deep down inside, they believe that they're the best player in the world when they step on that tee box. And I mean, there's so many guys. I remember Harold Varner's been a big mentor to me, and he's just like willpower. He's like, you can will your way to the PGA Tour, and you can. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, come on, man. But he's like, you got to have some talent. But he's like, that's the biggest thing. That was mentally, being able to step into that, saying, I got this, even when your back's against the wall or you're not swinging right on the range. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go wrong in golf, and at the end of the day, it's really about executing when it's your opportunity. So having that self-belief is huge. And I mean, you're never going to be fully comfortable. There's rarely ever a day where you step up on the range and you hit every ball perfect without
Hmm.
mishitting one. I mean, it's a game of adversity. So just having that belief that when I'm stepping into this next shot, I'm going to execute perfectly, and just keeping that belief even when things are wrong is the biggest thing in golf.
I remember one of the things that for me when I first started playing different tour events was you play with other players that are phenomenally good at certain things, and even though you're very good at things, some of them are just in their particular, whether it's driving or chipping or putting or carving irons and hitting it how they want to. You just play with guys, you just look at them and say, wow, I mean, that I'm good, but that guy on his driver is super impressive.
Yeah, there's definitely a few of those. I mean, you watch Cam Smith putt the ball, you watch Patrick Reed putt the ball. I mean, there's what you listen to Brooks Koepka hit an iron and it makes a different noise than yours, and you're like, that's something that's different. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's plenty of stuff like that, and that goes back to what I was saying, just owning yourself and just being content with your game and saying I might not be the best mid iron player, but we can still make it work. And I think Kevin Kisner had a great line, and he said, he's like, I'm not going to win this week or something like that. But they asking him, so why do you play? And he goes, well, they pay a lot for top 20. Everyone has those weeks. So yeah, it's really about playing the best you can in any given scenario. It's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and for you to win what is, or you at least used to be considered a major, the U.S. Amateur, it's and nowadays it might not be considered a major, but it's considered an extremely uh, big accomplishment, one of the biggest in the game of golf and the biggest in amateur golf. I'll argue that it's bigger than the British Am. So our friends over the pond, they can argue with us all they want to. I'm sure Stuart Morgan and a couple of those guys will call me and say you're crazy, but nonetheless, um, playing, it's like when you're in that arena, because I'm sure you've been asked what were you thinking at that moment, and when I'm just going to assume, and you correct me if I'm wrong and chime in when you want to, but when you're in the moment, you're doing what you need to do at that particular time. It's not like somewhere in your back of your mind, this is the biggest event I've ever played in to this point. But you also are focusing on the task at hand, and your focus is going towards that, which is allowing you to to have the success that you want to. So is that somewhat what was going through your mind at that time, or
Yeah.
am I off base at all?
No, no, absolutely. I mean, kind of, yeah, you have your moments where you got to take it all and enjoy it. Like you playing in a major, you got to take a second to be like, this is the Masters. But at the same time, you can't sit out there every hole and be like, I'm in the Masters. So yeah, you kind of, it's like you selectively learn to block things out. And yeah, I'll admit when I first got out there, I played Bay Hill, my first ever event as well. I was still an amateur, but I played Bay Hill and I was still at Michigan State. But I remember the first tee ball, I started on number 10. It's a dog leg right, and you take it directly over people's heads that are 30 feet off the tee box. And I could barely get the ball on the tee. My hand's going like this. And I'm like, those are the moments you remember. But after you hit that opening tee ball, it's just all of a sudden it all kind of melts away as the round goes on. And it's, the nerves settle. And then all of a sudden you're in the zone because you're doing, what you're used to. You're in control. So, I just remember, yeah, my first tee ball, it's like, holy shit, so all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got this. Even though I
Hmm.
didn't have it that day, but I felt like I had it.
What for a kid that's out there, whether they're in Canton, Michigan, or they're in Huntsville, Alabama, or Los Angeles, and they followed you, they watched you win the amateur, and they want to follow in your footsteps. What's the best advice you could give to those kids that might be listening to this episode?
Yeah, it's just really consistency and work ethic. I mean, you got to do it every day and you got to outwork people if you're not the best. There's, when you're younger, especially, there's those kids with natural talent who, may beat the snot out of you when you're younger, but over time you close that gap through hard work. So I think the biggest thing for me is just looking back at it. I'd always be hitting balls, whether it's raining, it could be snowing some days, and I'd be out there hitting balls. I mean, just having that ability to say, I'm going to wake up and get to it. And then, short game. That's the biggest thing. I think young kids get so obsessed with hitting it long now. I mean, I go back, I'll talk to the Michigan State kids and they're trying to max out their driver's swing speed in the TrackMan room. Meanwhile, they're three putting from 25 feet away. I'm like, let's go to the putting green. And that's where you're going to see the results. So I think, just fall in love with putting, become a great putter. I think that's the biggest thing as far as wanting to be professional. You have to be a good putter and just working at it, stay consistent, love it, playing as many tournaments as you can. That's another one. And then compete every day. The biggest thing for me when I was younger is I had this great group of kids growing up at a public course, Fox Hills in Plymouth, Michigan. There was 12 of us at least. I mean, all of them were older than me too. One of them played at North Carolina. His name was Henry Doe, All-American in high school. So I had kids like that where I was trying to beat them when I'm way younger. And I might lose every day, but I'm competing, getting better. We would gamble for, golf balls in the beginning of putting contests. And then it turned into, as we got older, it started turning into cash, obviously. So just competing. I mean, that's really all it is.
Yeah,
Competing, loving it, doing it every day.
that one, when you're competing against guys who were a number of years older than you, because when I was about that age, I was playing a lot more basketball than I was golf. Of course, back in the 80s, that's what you did in Michigan. Golf was, yeah, it's just a pastime thing if you're going to do it. Like, you're playing golf, are you crazy? But, when you, it's almost like the pressure was taking off of yourself, at least for me personally, when I was playing guys that were 3, 4, 5, 6 years older, because I had no expectations to do really well against them. Even though, as you said, you're competing and you're trying to do the best you can, you just know that these guys are going to swat your shot or they're going to steal it from you because they're so much better. But you're developing and you don't even know it. And then you do that for long enough, and then you compete against guys who are at your level. It becomes so much easier. But then that thing just keeps continuing. You got to continue to play people who are better than you are. So I can see how, even at the levels that you're at, based off what you did when you were younger, that was a very strong foundation that you had developed that says, it doesn't matter if it's Phil Mickelson. I grew up playing guys that were beating my brains in, and he might beat my brains in now, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to work my ass off to beat his brains in at some point. I'm going to get him. I'm going to track him down, hopefully. But I'm trying to paint a picture of what you're saying. Keep working, keep being consistent, keep getting better. And you might not see it on a day-to-day, but you look back over the course of 6 months or a year or 2 years, and you say, kids in high school, like, wow, I got beat a lot by these guys, and I completely forgot that my best score was 75, and now I'm shooting, I can break par. Because I completely forgot about that, and I was so focused on trying to catch them. So I think it's golden advice that any kid out there listening, boy, girl, whatever sport they're in, it's great advice. And even people in business today, that they lose sight of that fundamental.
Absolutely, I agree, 100%. You nailed it in that message, and yeah, absolutely. Just keep competing against people who are better than you, and eventually you're going to close that gap and push them up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal.
You got a time for a little wrap up? We do emergency 9 questions. We'll have a little fun before we check out for the day.
All right, let's do it.
All right. The first one and the last one, I tell everybody, these are the same you're the 150th episode. So it's hard to believe it's been that long, but 150. So the first and last one, just about everybody has gotten. And then the ones in between, we kind of mix and match. So the first one is, say you come back from your shoulder surgery there, and you really go on a tear. You make the Ryder Cup, and you're walking up to the first tee at the Ryder Cup, and they're going to crank some music, get the crowd going. What song are you going to have them start blasting over the speakers?
Oh man, see, that's a funny question because there's a few events you get walk-up songs at live events actually. So I've had this question before, but
Okay.
in a Ryder Cup's a different one. So man, I'm gonna go with just remember the name Fort Minor. That's a rap song from when I was growing up, but I used to always listen to it in the basement when I was working out.
Remember the name?
Yep.
Okay. And what was the band? Or what was the group?
Fort Minor.
Fort Minor. All right, cool. Let's see. Hollywood comes calling. So, James, we've watched your career. Did great in college, amateur champion, professional. We want to make a movie about your life. And we're going to let you pick any actor you want to play your role. Who are you going to have him pick?
Oh, give me Leonardo DiCaprio.
Not a bad choice. And chance of it being a smashing success just improved tenfold. Now this one, I'm very curious to hear your answer on this one. Your favorite purchase in the last year, $500 or less.
$500 or less?
Yep.
Oh, man, that's a good one. I'm I've become a big Amazon person lately.
Easy
Five
to
hundred
do.
dollars. Yeah, no, you sit on that thing all of a sudden. Yeah, $500 or less. Favorite thing. This is a good one because I'm not a shopaholic either. Honestly, it was probably the stack system.
I'll tell Sasha because I had him on shortly after he came out with that. He's a
Yeah,
good for
that's
you.
that
I'll
had
let
to
him.
be
I'll
it.
let him know.
Yeah, there's not too many things other than that. It's just the only things I buy are shoes, and I mean, other than that, nothing. So yeah,
Good. Good. That's a
gotta be
great
it.
one. Let's see, and I'll tell everybody that because I am an affiliate of the Stack, I did not get with James before the show and ask him to say that. He's obviously gotten his swing speed and gotten good advice from somebody. So everybody go out there and order your Stack today, and don't forget to use discount code Golf360 at checkout. That'll be our
There
plug
you
for
go,
the day.
free advertisement for you.
Yes. If you could change one rule in the game, what would it be? Because they got some goofy ones.
Yeah, one rule in the game. I mean, I think everyone's go-to is when you hit in the fairway and you're in a divot. You should be able to take it out of there.
I'll tell you a quick funny one on that. I went to the U.S. Open qualifier. This has got to be 20 years ago in Aiken, South Carolina. The first six, I think par on the front side was 35, or maybe teed off the back, 35. So one par three, and it was the eighth hole. I hit the first 7 fairways and was in a divot in every one. We got to the 5th hole, and guy walked up to my ball and said, "Boys, someone pissed in your cornflakes this morning." I said, "This is ridiculous," but
Yeah, that takes a lot of bad luck to do that one.
man, I mean, you hit the fairway. It's not like I was hitting it in the woods and it hit off a tree and went in the fair. I hit the fairway and was in a divot, 7 holes in a row. Whew. Let's
That's
see.
impressive.
Most used app on your phone.
Probably iMessage or Instagram.
All right. I'm with you on that one. Uh, this is a newer one. This is kind of a funny one. In your opinion, what's worse, iron covers or a well done steak?
Ooh, ooh, that's a really hard one. I'm gonna go with iron covers, strictly because my brother used them when he was younger, and we used to rip on them.
Please tell me he didn't also have the piece of leather string that went through all of them to keep them all connected too, did he?
No, luckily he didn't do that.
God, that
But
would
he
be.
got. I mean, he keeps his stuff nice, which props to him. But like at the same time, I see those, and you assume they're gonna shoot 90 plus that day.
If you could sit in a golf cart, talk to anybody you wanted to, who would it be?
I mean, honestly, I got to go with my team captain, Phil. That guy's he's a walking encyclopedia of everything, not only golf but everything. So he's always entertaining.
I'm sure he'll. Look, I don't know him. I have a lot of friends who do, but I'm sure he'll take that to heart. It'll make him feel pretty good that he had that much influence on you. I mean, as much smack as he talks, um, and if he listens to this, this is giving him praise, and I'm sure that's going to make him feel pretty good inside.
Yeah, he'll be happy I didn't say Tiger.
That's for sure. If you could put a restaurant in your kitchen, what restaurant would it be?
Oof. I'll go with Chick-fil-A. I love
Oh,
it too much.
of all
It's
the
fast
places
food,
you've
but
been
I
around the
love.
world and Chick-fil-A wins out, that's pretty impressive for them.
I mean, I like fast service, man. If the food's ready, it's a different story. But if it's, I gotta wait for it to be prepped. Chick-fil-A. It's too
Okay.
good.
All right. Now this one, again, this is everyone's gotten the first and last one, so I don't want to get you in trouble with this one. But in your opinion, as far as golf is concerned, who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time?
Who's the greatest of all time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up watching Tiger, so I got to go Tiger. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, I know the Jack and all that, the debate. I've had this a zillion times, but I mean, I think just the quality of athletes getting better and better, and what Tiger, who Tiger played against. I know Jack, competed against a zillion good golfers too, but I just think Tiger changed a lot in the game, and he's someone I grew up idolizing. So yeah, I'm gonna go Tiger.
I don't think there's a wrong answer in that. It's Tiger's got the edge, and it has seemed as I look back over the years, and again, 150 episodes, it seems to be more era driven. So if you're
Yep,
most of the people who are 50 plus have gone with Jack. Obviously, anyone 50 and under 50 has gone Tiger, and you can argue that all day long, and no one's going to be wrong.
I agree. I agree. I mean, they both changed the game, that's for sure.
Where's the best way people can follow you? They want to follow your getting better, getting healthier, getting your game back in track, and follow your success in next
Yeah,
year
I
and
mean,
going forward.
I'm kind of a ghost on social media now. I post once in a while, I'll post stories. Instagram's kind of my main thing, JJPIOT. That's where I'm mostly at. But like I said, I'm kind of low key on social media. But yeah, that's the best shot. Otherwise, just Asian tour next season, or hopefully you see me on some local media making a run in some tournament.
I would look forward to seeing it. James, has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun. I wish you all the best, and I'll be messaging you from time to time, hopefully with words of encouragement and
Awesome.
congratulations on stuff.
Yes, sir. That's the plan. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Anytime.